What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to the bench for a brand new episode here on Rivals and Adversaries. We are back on our 1/48 scale A6M3 Model 32 by Eduard, and today we're going to jump in and start working on that cockpit. So the first thing I want to go ahead and do is I'm going to look through the instructions here. We're going to start picking out parts and pieces and figure out what we got to do to make this thing look awesome. Now, one thing I do need to go ahead and figure out though before I get into anything else is I have to figure out which scheme I'm going to go ahead and paint, because there are actual parts and pieces that are very specific to certain schemes. So I got to figure out which I'm going to go ahead and paint so that I can come back in here and figure out what parts I'm going to need to go ahead and use. There are so many parts in this kit that was kind of overwhelming, but let me go ahead and take a look at the end schemes here. Now, I've been looking through the instruction manual trying to figure out which scheme I like the most, and to be honest, I'm leaning heavily towards scheme C. This one is a very standard gray aircraft, but it has actually had field applied green squiggle camo over the entire top of the aircraft. So what I want to go ahead and do is try for this one. Go ahead and finish it off as if it's just one of the basic early war Zeros. Use that amber gray. Go ahead and overcoat the entire model with that and then apply the decals. And after the decals go down, I can come back after I seal it and start applying my squiggle camo. It's going to be very difficult to do because I'm not well versed at doing that, but I think it'd be a really fun project and I think it pushed the envelope for me just a little bit. So yeah, I think scheme C is the way to go. Now moving back into the instructions, guys, we now know what version we're going to go ahead and paint. So we're going to go ahead and just start pulling parts out and marking off what we're going to use and what we're not going to use. Because like I said, there are some scheme specific parts and pieces that we need to go ahead and figure out so that we don't mix and match the wrong versions. Also, we need to come in here and figure out what parts we need to go ahead and modify. Now, there's a couple of pieces of equipment there on the side of the Zero's cockpit that are not used by every single Zero, Model 32. I'm not sure what the equipment does, but I know that in the reference photos, some actually have the components. Other reference photos show just a shelf with lightning holes drilled through them where the actual piece of equipment would have been placed originally. So what I want to go ahead and do is a couple of these parts here on the left side of the fuselage, they are actually called out to be optional. So I'm going to go ahead and install those parts, but I'm going to heavily modify them by cutting off the actual piece of equipment and just installing that little shelf. Then I can drill some holes through it, add some interest to the cockpit. So let's go ahead and jump into our first time lapse. I want to go ahead and start in on all the work there. I want to check the parts, check the pieces. I want to start removing some of the details, get ready for photo etch. I'm not going to install a lot of photo etch today, but I want to get ready for when we do. And then of course I want to add some wires and give this a little bit more life to the cockpit floor and maybe the sidewalls. So let's go ahead and jump into that time lapse, guys. Let's start having some fun. Let's see what we can do. All right, everybody, so we are back. Not a super long video, but you can see here we've added in wires. We've done a little bit of scratch building, not a lot here, just a tiny bit, mostly just solder wires. We have not glued everything together because I need to come in and do some detail painting, and I would think it'd be easier to go ahead and paint these when they're unattached to the base of the cockpit. So that's going to go ahead and maybe be next episode, but I honestly am pretty happy with what I've added in here. There's a lot of photo etch in this kit. Joe was not lying whatsoever, and I'm not going to be using all of it. It's just there's no point. If you're not going to see the parts and pieces, they're such nice pieces of photo etch. I want to go ahead and save them so they don't waste them on something you're never going to see. I can use them for other scratch built kit parts or maybe some kit bashing that I might do later on. So we're going to go ahead and just install the very basic photo etch that you're going to see. Everything else we're going to keep for a rainy day. So zooming in here on the right side of the fuselage, you can see I added in those two little shelves right there. And that would have been like, I think for the Morse code machine, and then for some other, almost looking like a radio or some other box with dials on it. Went ahead and sliced both of those off, and then I covered over top of that with a small strip of styrene. Went ahead and covered those over, drilled some holes down through it, and glued them into the sidewall. Going over to the cockpit floor itself, you can see I added in quite a few wires. And this is actually coming off of reference photos, but also my modeling book that I've got from Offspring. Shows a lot of detail there on the right side. Very little on the left side, but mostly pipes and whatnot on the right. So I went ahead and glued all the parts and pieces in there. Did not glue the seat on quite yet because that's got to be seat belted. And I did not glue some things like the rudder pedals or the instrument panel on just yet. Kind of got a little bit burned out by that, but we'll do that eventually. I did go ahead and install the canisters in the back here for CO2 and whatnot. And I did glue some of my solder wires up there as pipes. So I think it looks pretty cool. On the left side of the fuselage, as you can see, we added in some wires to act as pipes. We just used some 0.3mm solder. We did add in some of the photo etch, but we actually also added in some of the plastic parts. You'll notice I did not replace the radio with the photo etch parts because I really like how the kit part looks. It's got some great detail, a lot of 3D dials and whatnot, so I didn't feel that scraping all that off and gluing on the photo etch would have really helped too much. So like I said, we're not going to use all the PE parts, just what I think adds something to the aircraft. But that's not to say we didn't remove some details. You can see here for one of the side consoles, I went ahead and I sliced off all the dials and levers and switches. You can see here we do have a PE part for that, so that will be probably next episode. I can go ahead and sandwich those together and glue them down to the actual plastic. On the other side as well, I didn't do a lot of work there, but I did add in some wires. I cleaned up some of the parts and pieces. We do have to come in and add some more photo etch to that, but again, that's going to be next time because I want to go ahead and paint everything and I don't want to paint over the photo etch because it's actually pre-painted photo etch. That would be kind of counterproductive. Now, in putting everything together, as you can see, these fit just right up under the cockpit floor and the rear bulkhead, and then they drop inside the aircraft. Doesn't really just drop right into place and stay put. We might have to come back in and glue in some extra pieces and parts like these side details. Those will have to be glued down and kind of held back a little bit. Not only that, but just kind of fitting everything into such a small little cockpit is going to be pretty tough. Not really sure what to do with that, but we're going to push on. We're going to see what else we can do. But that is it, guys. We are all finished up for today. Next episode, we're going to come on back and we're going to first off start by doing some priming with Mr. Surfacer. I want to go ahead and prime all the parts and pieces to get everything nicely protected so I can come back and I can start applying some of my colors, such as, Mitsubishi interior green, maybe some lighter green for some highlights. So we have a lot to do for sure, but I think we can handle it. Now, in terms of the PE parts, there's certain areas I just did not want to fool with, so I left those out. I just used the plastic parts themselves, and honestly, they look pretty good. I'm not really too concerned about that. Though trying to get all the parts and pieces to fit into the fuselage the way the instructions intend you to do might be a little bit difficult to go ahead and accomplish. We'll see how that works. We'll go ahead and tackle that next episode, though, once we go ahead and paint, detail, and get all that good stuff done. Now, I have been using my Offspring modeling the A6M book extensively, specifically the rear pages here on the A6M3. I've been using these color photos as inspiration and also as a guide to go ahead and line up some wires and add in parts and pieces. I like it. It's not perfect, mind you, and yeah, the photo etch is a super tedious project. But honestly, this is a fantastic kit that is chocked full of so many details, so highly recommend it if you love detail. Like I said, I'm not going to necessarily use all the photo etch. So we'll have to come back and see what parts we use and we'll go from there. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Until our next episode, you know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. And we'll see you back here on episode 3 for Rivals and Adversaries and our 1/48 scale A6M3 Model 32 by Eduard. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care of yourselves and we'll see you soon.